Welcome to Search Talk Live, the search engine optimization and marketing experts, Robert O'Haver and Matt Weber. Powered by the Robert Palmer family of companies.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Search Talk Live. I'm your host, Robert, along with Matt Weber of Roar Internet Marketing. Matt, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Beautiful weather out there today. Have you noticed?
Yeah, it is nice. It's always sunny here, right?
Yeah, I think now there's only 2 seasons in Florida anymore. I think there's the this is why I live here season, which we're in right now.
Right.
And the, oh my God, global warming is scaring the hell out of me season. I think that's it. That's all we're left with.
I have to agree.
But
and
it's a
then
beautiful
monsoons,
day.
too, as well.
Yeah, but a beautiful day and a great day to talk about search engines.
Yes, I would have to say. Those of you tuning in for the first time, we do talk about everything. We talk about to do with digital marketing anyway. Not relationships or anything like that.
Got any personal problems you want to talk about? Call us now.
Yeah. We talk about social media, conversion optimization, SEO. We talk, paid advertising. You name it, we cover it. We just cover everything.
Yeah, good show on content recently, too. We had a lot of really good shows on content and how to grab good content, how to make good content. Really good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys want to catch up on previous shows, you can go to searchtalklive.com and listen to previous shows there. Or you can go to Spreaker, which is SPREAKER.com. Which is amazing. We're just about to 60,000 download and plays of the show.
Fantastic. It keeps growing faster every week.
Yeah, I think so. It's quite amazing. But you can also get your questions in on Twitter. If you go to type in hashtag Search Talk Live, we'll answer those questions live on the air. Our guest today is kind of a mentor to me. I mean, he's been in the industry a very long time. Formerly the head of SEO and content at Moz, and he is the founder of Fazillion, Cyrus Shepard. Cyrus, how's it going?
Hey guys, how are you? It's you guys are in Florida. I'm in Seattle, about as far away as you can get from Florida. But we are also having a beautiful sunny day here, albeit it's probably 30 degrees cooler than where you are. But it's great we can both be experiencing weather. And hey guys, congratulations on 60,000 downloads. That's incredible and a worthy achievement. I'm sure you'll be at 100,000 in no time at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting very close.
Maybe by tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks.
That's
to
how
Cyrus.
it works.
No.
It's all about positive thinking.
Well,
Yes.
Cyrus, today you want to talk about some SEO experiment and split testing, and setting those clients up for success. I mean,
yeah.
So let's dive right into it. What do you say?
I've been thinking a lot. Yeah, I've been asking myself a lot lately why SEO sucks so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't suck in my world. My world, SEO is great, but I'm conscious of the fact that many of us, you guys and the people we follow on Twitter, we kind of live in a bubble. I follow 250 people on Twitter. They kind of follow the same 250 SEO content marketing experts.
Yeah.
And, we get this impression that, everybody's an expert. We go to conferences, we listen to experts talk. But the reality is, in the real world, SEO is kind of doesn't have always the best reputation, and people's experience with it kind of sucks a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You look on LinkedIn, there are 150,000 people with SEO in their title, and almost 2 million people that do, SEO somewhere in their profile, that have touched on SEO as some part of their job.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to imagine the vast majority of those people aren't experts. They are very busy. They only do SEO as part of their job. And these are our ambassadors to the world. And I think that has something to do with it right there.
Yeah. Well, before we dive into it, I do want you to tell a little bit about yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Your background.
Sorry, I'm too excited to talk about this. Yeah.
You're an expert
so
on
I'm
that subject.
Cyrus Shepard. I've been doing SEO since 2009. Kind of got into it late in the game, but once I did, I really loved it. Worked for Moz, the SEO software company in Seattle, for a number of years. I was lead SEO there and eventually head of audience development. worked on a number of projects, including the Beginner's Guide to SEO, the Web Developer's Cheat Sheet, things like that. Today, I own my own marketing company, content marketing company with my wife. We own all our own content. We don't produce anything for clients generally. We monetize through affiliate marketing and advertising, and it's just a lot of fun creating things without any strings attached and putting them out into the world and having fun with them. And that's my backstory.
Very good.
You know, that in itself is a significant statement for some of the folks listening, that you're able to create a very successful and robust business based on generating content.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sometimes you see that in SEOs, that they'll sort of drop out of the Twitterverse or the public profile, and they'll go and work on their own projects. And I don't want to name names, but a lot of the people that I really learned from in the last decade have kind of dropped out, and they've kind of gone under the radar and found other ways to make a living than selling consulting or selling SEO education. Mm-hmm. And good for them. But I love public SEO. I love teaching SEO. I love speaking about SEO too much to fully leave that environment. So I think I'll always have a foot in the door doing this. It's kind of funny because I go to a lot of conferences and I speak. I have a big European tour coming up next month in Prague and Milan and Romania. And the funny thing is, a lot of my fellow speakers all either sell software or they sell consulting, and I do neither one of those. I have no monetization. So why do I go and speak at these things? And I think it's because I'm stupid.
You need a book.
It's passion.
I need something to sell at these conferences because I have no reason to go. But
we're going to get you a DVD set.
A lot. Yeah.
Well, I'd love to get the conversation off on testing by talking a little bit about, for the folks listening to the show, where do they start in determining what to test?
Yeah. Well, let me back up. Can I back up just a little bit? I want to tie it into my conversation about why SEO sucks so bad.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I realize is that so many people are just following best practices. When I got started in 2009, it was the Web Developer's Cheat Sheet, and I made a living, just doing consulting, just implementing best practices. Like, we need to change your URLs. We need to, do this with your robot's text, and traffic would increase. And, that's all it was. And those 150,000 people on LinkedIn that do SEO as part of their job, because they're not experts, a lot of times they're just doing best practices. And a lot of agencies only sell best practices. If you sign up for the worst SEO service in the world, which is GoDaddy SEO services, they're selling you best practices on a monthly package, and they're horrible, outdated best practices. So one of the things I loved about working in-house as opposed to, client work is when I work in-house anywhere, I always have time to fail. I have time to do experiments and run them through the long term and see what works, keep the winners, throw away the losers. That's how real SEO works in the long term. And that's what I think so many people are missing out when they're just following best practices. So that's why I'm a huge proponent of positioning SEO as a series of experimentations, whether it's A/B experimentations or one-off experimentations, instead of because we don't often know what's going to work, especially in this age when Google is becoming increasingly a black box.
Mm-hmm.
We don't understand. They used to tell us exactly what was going into the algorithm. Not exactly, but with Panda, right, we understood it was these factors. With Penguin, we understood it was links. But the last 3 or so years, it's just been major update. It's been Fred. We don't know what's going into the algorithm. We don't know what's working or not. We can implement these best practices. We can put images, in our alternate image tags, and nothing happens. So we have to try things and see if they work, and then set those expectations up accordingly. And I think that's a shift that we need to make. Both with agencies and in-house, that we're not delivering best practices. We're delivering intelligent experimentation, and that's what I think could help our image as an industry. So let's get back to your question. What was it again?
Where do people start? Where do people start thinking about what should they test?
Yeah. So obviously, now I've just kind of ripped on best practices, but I don't want to. I need to backtrack a little bit. And I'm personally, my hands are dirty because I help create a lot of these best practices. That SEO cheat sheet that I started with in 2009, that was written by Danny Dover, who is a friend of mine. I was responsible for rewriting that and updating that. And it's been downloaded tens and hundreds of thousands of times. So my hands are dirty, but best practices are always a good place to start with experimentation. We're going to try to rewrite our title tags in this way, or we are going to definitely, make sure our site is crawlable, those sort of things. Those are the experiments. Without having an expectation of results, you're going to try them and see if it works and go forward. So always start with best practices and go from there. But then I have some ideas if you want to hear them about where to test from there.
Definitely.
Yeah, I do want to add something though. When you're doing the testing, is this controlled environment? I mean, is this where are you testing on your specific site, or are you testing on a test site, or how are you doing?
I run both types of tests. I run pure SEO experiments. I have one going now where I'm testing anchor text, and for that I purchased 15 separate domains. I set them all up, put them through a CDN, monitoring rankings on everything. It's the biggest experiment I've ever. So far, I've learned absolutely nothing. None of my hypotheses are coming true, but I have that network set up, and I can use it for all sorts of different tests now. But in reality, most of the time, you're going to be testing on your own property or on your client's property or your company's work. And the reason for that is I can perform a test in the wild on an experiment site, but you don't know how that's going to work on your own site because there's so many different factors at play. So, and you can perform a test on your site and it's going to work on site A, but it's not going to work on site B. So it's always going to be on your own site, whether it's a portion of the pages. Sometimes you have to apply the experiment to the entire site, which makes things messy because you can't eliminate the variables. It's best if you can do some sort of split test, but generally the gold standard is to perform it on your own site.
Okay, so we've got folks listening, and that's good stuff. Now, what after they finish off the basic best practices, what are some of the most productive areas they can focus their time on?
Well, let me tell you about an experiment that I ran this summer that was really interesting. I don't know if anybody recalls Etsy, the company based in San Francisco, I think, that sells online hand goods. They published the results of an experiment where they did a huge multivariate test on their title tags. And they tested all kinds of titles, and it was a great experiment. They published the results. If you Google Etsy SEO title tag experiment, you'll find it in Google. And one of the things they found, one of the general things they found with Etsy, is that shorter title tags performed better, which was kind of surprising. Eliminating certain keywords in the title tag performed better, and they think it was because those titles match the query a little more tightly. So I had a client. This is a great example of diverging from best practices. Best practices for your title tag, you always put your site name at the end of the title tag. So if I'm Cyrus Shepard, my title tag says, SEO blog, CyrusShepard.com, or Moz. Moz is always at the end. It's always Etsy at the end. I had a client, and I can't tell you who the client was, but their site name was 22 characters long. It was it's 3 words, is extremely long, and it was at the end of every title tag, and it had no keywords in it. It was not related to the query at all. So this site was getting, I don't remember, 1 to 2 million, fairly significant traffic, 1 to 2 million visits a month. So we did a test where we removed the site name. We violated best practices. We removed the site name from a set of URLs. Those URLs rose 22%. I was blown away by that. And now we're in the process of, rolling it out through site-wide. You know how many links I have to build to get a 22% gain in traffic?
Right.
So we did it just by removing the site name, and we made those title tags, however Google analyzes them, we made them contextually more relevant to the queries. So that was an example of a great win. Now the problem was I thought I was a genius. I thought I'd learned something amazing. But I tried that on 3 other sites, sites that I own. Removed the site name, absolutely nothing. Nothing happened, no increase, no decrease. It was isolated to this one experiment on this one particular site because that situation, that 22 character site name was unique to them. That's why you have to try I could tell you that, hey, remove the site name from your title tags, but that's not going to work for everybody. But it's something you could try, but it's going to be very specific to you and very specific to your site. So, these are the type of things that I like to do.
So, Cyrus, when you're running these experiments for the listener, how long of a time are you waiting to find out you're getting results from it?
It depends on the size of the site and how often. There are several variables at play. But basically, how frequently Google is crawling those pages. If you're running a large multivariate experiment with thousands of pages, it may take Google weeks into months to fully process all of those changes. And you're going to have to let that run a long time. If you're running a 10-page experiment, you can submit each of those pages through Google Search Console, get them crawl quickly, and within a couple of weeks, you can start to get an idea of the changes being made. So generally, most of my experiments tend to be a little smaller, so you can tell within a few weeks. But that's generally a good guideline.
Okay.
So we're off to a great start. Just knowing that we can make a somewhat minor change in a title tag and in one particular instance get a double-digit lift in site traffic to a URL.
Yeah, it's going to take more testing.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the thing. It worked for this one particular site, but that's where the art and creativity come in, because that gives you an idea where you can look at your title tags and say, there are extraneous keywords here that aren't matching the query. Is there a way I can improve these? I love using Google Search Console data because it's the one source of reliable keyword data that we left. They also have an API that you can pull that data in, and you can compare how people are reaching your URLs, the exact keywords they are using versus how you optimize them for. And I think when you take that data and you match it, when you find places where there's a mismatch, and you optimize your titles or your pages, and you use that keyword data and find a way to actually put it into your page, whether it's your call to action or something like that, you can see pretty good lifts in both traffic and conversions.
I see. And then what was the character length you were averaging?
That's a really good question. Anywhere from it. I don't have a great way to answer that. Most of the titles were between 50 and 70 characters, so way longer than they should have been. By the time we got them down, they were all under 60. Nice. By the time we removed the extraneous title tags.
What's the next low-hanging fruit for testing beyond title tags?
While I'm on that subject, I want to tell you one of my favorite tricks for increasing conversions. So using that Google Search Console data, right? So we can see on every page, you can see what people were looking for when they came to that page, right? So what I like doing is taking my top keywords, and if I have a button on a page, I like putting those exact keywords in the button. A good example for when I was at Moz, we had follower wonk, right? So the follower wonk is a tool that you can search Twitter bios. If you look at the follower wonk page, I don't know what it is now, and we never implemented this change. But the call to action was something like try follower wonk, or log in now, or one of those very generic buttons that you find. But the top search term that people used to find that page was search Twitter bios. So if this was my property, I would take search Twitter bios now, and I would put that into the button, because that's exactly what people want to do. And I find whenever I do that on my own properties, when I put the exact keyword phrase in the button, or the call to action, or use it in my H1 tags, my conversions usually go up and to the right, and it's always a positive thing, because I'm hitting those emotional triggers. Hey, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to search Twitter bios now, and that they're going to dive into the tool. So they didn't come to this page to try follower wonk. They came to this page to search Twitter bios. So making those connections with with the psychology of what people are looking for is often a easy, low-hanging fruit. And we have the data. It's just a matter of implementing it into your copywriting.
Now, isn't that best practices? Just messing.
No, but no one does it.
That's true. How often do you still see a button today that says submit?
Yeah, you do. So
on big sites,
and generally, my experience is the content pages, landing pages by any company of a reasonable size is handled by copywriters who are not informed of the keywords and the call to actions and the data people are using to access that page. So getting that data to them is often very helpful.
Sure. I would, but sometimes that works good on both ways, Cyrus. So you're not having someone trying to pigeonhole keyword insert when they're writing that content,
Yeah, I'm kind of guilty of that sometimes, but we'll gloss over that fact.
If there is a hot topic in SEO, everything seems to be hot. Snippet testing is one that's generating a lot of blog content and buzz. Yep. What's your thought on that? Is there a value in snippet testing, and is it controllable enough to the degree you can test?
So, yeah, I do. I actually do a lot of snippet testing. I find I used to have the theory that I used to leave my meta descriptions blank, with the theory that Google would populate the meta description with the keywords that people were looking for. But when I got better at writing descriptions, I threw that away. And now I try to craft my meta descriptions using that keyword data and good copywriting, putting numbers in there and call to actions and things like that. It is an effective technique. So I'm glad you brought that up. Snippet optimization is awesome, and it's free. I go back to my link analogy. If I can get a 7% boost with snippet optimization, I have to build a lot of links to get that same 7% boost. And building links is hard, or I have to create new content, new pages. That's all hard. Snippet optimization is super easy, and it's such a good win, and it's such the ROI of the effort you put into it makes it so much worth it.
Let's break it down for the listeners, though. Take them through the steps of a snippet test.
So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my vertical. I'm going to look at the keyword query that I'm trying to rank for, or I am ranking for, and I'm going to go through and find all the features that my competitors have. So it might be reviews, it might be some sort of structured markup, it might be a table that they're displaying in the SERP, and I'm going to reverse engineer that, and I'm going to go through and add all of those elements. It's often structured data, and I'm going to put that in my into my content and see if I can get those featured snippets to trigger. My general rule about snippets, if you can get a feature to show, it generally helps you. The more real estate you can take up, it generally helps you. Just because your result is bigger, takes up more space, and people are going to read more. So that's the first step I do. Find all the features that I think I can get to trigger. Reviews are often hit or miss. Google's pretty diligent about showing reviews for trusted sites for certain queries, but other features, just do a search and see what your competitors are doing. So that's step one. Step two is actually the copywriting. Writing your meta description as if it's a short sales pitch, of 160 characters. Using your keyword data, what people are looking for, and then just like any other test, throwing it live, throwing it on a few URLs instead of all your URLs, and seeing what kind of lift you can get. advanced is trying to get the featured snippet if you can for certain queries. And there's a whole process for that, which we probably don't need to go into here, but when I get the featured snippet, I always try to.
Getting into the snippet side, what exactly elements are you using? Are you using the title, description?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm using, there's four basic elements. There's the title, there's the URL, which sometimes by the time you get to snippet optimization, you don't have control over, but when it's a new URL, you can certainly test different variations. So the title, the URL, the meta description, and your structured data. And structured data gives you a huge lever. I've been experimenting lately with tables and putting structured data for my tables into my head using JSON LD. Seems to work pretty well. But anything I can get, I will do. And it's sometimes I'll dump a bunch of structured data into my post, and nothing happens. Google won't pick it up, but maybe they'll pick it up later. I've never seen a situation where it hurts to mark up data as much as possible.
And I know we're kind of getting close to the half break, but I want to follow up on that particular point. There are those who theorize that conversion testing is becoming more complicated now, as crawl budgets indicate that entire content is not being crawled in its entirety, so that we can't evaluate the effect of a particular change in as complete way as we could have perhaps a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. What's your thought on that?
I think there's some validity to that. But if you have that problem, you have two problems. You have the problem of the experimentation, but also you got to figure out why aren't whole sections getting crawled. Google has come out with their new Search Console low interest report, which is basically a collection of URLs that they have indexed, but they never show in search results, rarely, and crawling seems to be they don't seem to crawl those URLs. So I think in the future, when they release that feature more widely, we'll be able to help identify those pages that aren't being crawled or low interest, and see what we can do to increase engagement and get crawling up on those sections.
That's the crappy content list.
Yeah.
They
gave it a nice name, didn't they?
Yeah. Low winter. And I hope Google clarifies exactly what that is, because everybody's looking at that. People who have access to the beta, and a couple of my semi-clients have those. And low interest. What is this going on with this low interest report? So I hope they give us some more clarity.
I'm not interested in indexing it.
Yeah, exactly. You have a bunch of crap. Well said.
So let's see. Do you have something else you want to say? Let's go ahead and take our break.
Let's take our break. Refresh.
Search Talk Live is sponsored by the Robert Palmer family of companies. Check out robertpalmercompanies.com for more information.
A press release is a very effective way to draw attention to your business, and something every company should take advantage of. Press releases are a great way for your company to announce new product launches, company milestones, and new partnerships, and even up-and-coming events. The hard part is knowing which press release distribution service to use and which is the most effective. Well, I have the answer. PR Underground. PR Underground is both an effective and affordable distribution service. For just $49.95, PR Underground guarantees your next press release will be on Google News, digitaljournal.com, social media, and over 150 news and TV websites such as ABC, NBC, Fox, and CBS. Now, if you upgrade to the Diamond plan, your announcements will appear on Yahoo Finance and an additional 100 news sites and blogs. This is one of the tools I recommend you use for PR, marketing, and SEO. PR Underground offers a huge distribution at a great price. Go to prunderground.com, that's prunderground.com, and send out your next press release. Enter the code SearchTalkLive, all one word, and get 25% off your first press release.
Find the true value of your home when you log on. Homevalue.com.
Get your questions in on Twitter. Type hashtag SearchTalkLive and your question. Now back to the show.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Cyrus Shepard. about A/B testing and SEO and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah. So for everybody listening to the show, if we ask the question, how often has your website changed in the past 6 months? If the answer is no, zero, nothing, then let's get out the notepads, because this is where good SEO happens. Testing, changing. You just can't put up a website anymore and hope for the best.
Right. Cyrus, now I know this is not directly, but indirectly, have you seen, using rich snippets or schema, any upticks in your, I mean, because we know with some of the testing that like Moz had done and some of the stuff that we've seen where the more traffic going to your site raises, can give you that bump.
Yep.
So what would you say, have you seen any bump using rich snippets?
I have, and it's very complex to tease it apart from, you have increase in click-through rates,
right,
which some people theorize can be a feedback loop to Google to, due to, increased engagement with the page. Task completion can be a signal to Google to increase traffic. Distill did an experiment last year, earlier this year. It was in a few of their decks that they spoke about in conferences, where they added structured. They took a product page. I can't remember the exact protocol, but they took a product page for e-commerce, and they added structured data to each of the products, and they saw a definite increase, in rankings and traffic. So I think there's evidence out there, and it certainly can help increase your traffic. It's just hard to tease apart exactly why. Is Google favoring the structured content? Are they doing it because of user interaction, or are you getting increased click-through? But it does work. I guess you don't really need to know why. Just know that it works.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I want to talk about a couple of mistakes people make when doing testing. Mistakes I've certainly made. And some of them are very obvious, such as, in general, don't test more than one thing at a time. If you're testing your titles, don't test your content at the same time. Second is record everything. There's a couple tools that I use for recording everything. I use Google Search Console. If you do fetch and render, they will keep a copy of the page's source code, that you can look up anytime. So I'm often submitting that just kind of as a record of my own site. And you can certainly, have some in-house solutions, if you use your code repository. I also use a tool called Stillio, which takes a screenshot of my major sites every single day, track every changes. I can go back, and get a year and a half's worth of data and look at exactly what my page looked like that day. And there are a lot of, it doesn't matter the solution you use, just make sure you record everything. Yeah. And the third mistake that people make all the time when testing, whether it's A/B testing or whatever, is that whenever you launch a test, you almost always, not almost always, but you often get a false positive. People engage with the page more. They click more buttons. They do everything. Because if you have returning visitors at all, they see that something has changed on the page, and they are more likely to interact with it. Mm-hmm. We did a test at Moz years ago where we we celebrated with a bunch of fun call to actions and buttons, and we had 4 different kinds, and the test went through the roof. And then when we actually launched the winner, conversions kind of went down a little bit, and I realized afterwards that it wasn't that we had a great call to action. It's that we were changing it up all the time, and that's what people were responding to. So sometimes just a simple change, people will respond to a change in your website, and that will give you a false positive, and then you'll actually launch the winner, and it's not that great because people were responding to the change and not your actual winner. So that's a mistake that I have made so many times.
Yeah, one of the questions that I was so anxious to ask you as soon as we found out you're going to be a guest, given your history in testing, is what test did you do that you can recall that had the most unexpected result?
Ooh, that's a good one. Should have asked that earlier. I would have told you about that title tag. One thing I'm not going to say an unexpected result, but one thing that I've been experimenting with a lot lately is cadence. We all know about updating your content to give it a freshness boost. The typical way that most people do that I've talked to in the industry, you can read all these guides online. They'll say, find a piece of content that needs updating, and they'll find this 2 or 3 year old blog post, and then they'll rewrite it, add some images and whatever, and they see a boost. That's a great technique. It works really well. But another technique, if you have a very important page on your site, one of the things that Google talks about in its freshness patents is frequency of updates. And I see a lot of sites, publishing sites, recipe sites, things like that. Their top pages are updated every few weeks, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. And I think more than just updating the page, I think Google is looking at the rate at which you refresh that page. If you're refreshing a page every couple of weeks, it must be an important page. And also by refreshing it, your return visitors are interacting with it more because they're responding to change. And so it becomes a feedback loop. So not just making the updates, but your important pages, scheduling a way, finding a way to keep those pages fresh with new information, whether it's news, new recipes, new sporting things, new tips and tricks, whatever it is. The frequency of the update is very important. I wish I could quantify it, but it's something that I've been experimenting more with some of my top pages.
Okay. Now, similar question. What is something you have found so consistently in your testing, you would now call it Cyrus's Law?
Cyrus's Law.
Wow. Doesn't that kill the tattoo at the end?
All right. This is going to dive into the area of best practices. But I am a huge fan of watching. Oh, man, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. PageRank sculpting is a dirty word in SEO. Back in 2011, Google changed how they no-follow links, and then Google killed the PageRank toolbar, and it got conflated with this. But I'm still a huge fan of watching how PageRank flows through a site. Today, if you call it site architecture, that's cool. As long as you call it site architecture, no one's going to bat an eye at you. But I still call it PageRank sculpting, and I'm a huge fan of it. And not by using no-follow or tricks or anything like that,
Sure.
But just by paying attention to the links that are getting clicks and the links that are likely to get clicks. I think it's such a bigger factor than people realize. And if you put, you can put heat map tracking on your site. Google apparently is measuring what links people are actually clicking through the Chrome browser, and it's likely that they are giving those links more weight than links that aren't getting clicked. So my rule that I don't talk about a lot is pay super attention to those links in your primary paragraphs at the top of your page, and the links in the bottom of your page are almost throwaways sometimes. They might pass some anchor text or whatever, but PageRank sculpting can be hugely effective if you pay attention to those things and rearranging your links, making your links more prominent, paying attention to those small things. That's my own private rule. I don't talk about it a lot because I don't want to be called a heretic, in the SEO world. Cyrus is advocating PageRank sculpting.
I totally agree with you on that, though.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. It's somehow it turned into this thing in the SEO industry where PageRank sculpting was a trick. It's something that's not very effective. I think it's highly effective if you do it right. Maybe not on a single link, but if you do it at scale, if you've got 40 links in your footer and you scale those down to 10, that's going to have a huge impact on the way Google crawls your site. So especially when you're talking at large sites, when you scale PageRank sculpting, it makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll just call it site architecture and be on everybody's good side.
Well, I want to dive into this a little bit. Nowadays, with the way Google is, the Penguin algorithm,
Yep.
the way it's just ignoring some links, just dropping them from existence. What's your rule of thumb on quality of link?
Well, that's a huge question. When Google rolled out the last Penguin update, they said, we're just going to ignore links,
Right.
And it seemed the overall effect was it made link building much safer. You didn't really have, if you have a bad link pointing to you, they're just going to ignore it.
Right.
That said, I have ignored some I've continued to use the disavow file for very toxic links, and it seems to be effective if the link is, obviously paid, or, part of a PBN that's, just super obvious. But generally, the opposite seems to be true, that you just don't have to worry about those. People are getting bigger gains from removing their disavow file now, and just let Google sorting through the links, because some of the ones that you disavowed are probably going to be good. So I would say that anybody who has a disavow file that's been around for years, I would say maybe try removing it and see what happens. You can always put it back in if things go sour, but I'd say there's a good chance you might actually see an uptick in traffic, because you might be disavowing some links that you weren't supposed to before. So,
right. And with the blanket statement that John Mueller had left on Twitter saying that some bad links are good for your site. I was like, what?
That's it. Yeah.
Now we're really confused.
Yeah. So I love all links.
It's like trying to follow the food nutrition guidelines anymore.
Yeah. It's also frustrating now that it seems to me in the last couple of years, the art of private blog networks has become a little bit more sophisticated. And there's certain practitioners in the industry that private blog networks have become the new, paid links. Or they were always, paid links, but the practitioners have gotten a little more sophisticated. They seem to be having success, and that's certainly frustrating, but I suspect in a year or two, if they continue to get more sophisticated, we'll see Google taking another swipe at cracking down on links in another way to try to get at some of these private blog networks, because honestly, they are still working. They're still causing a lot of spam in the SERPs. They're still under the radar enough that Google doesn't have to worry about them, but I see that changing in the next couple of years.
It's an ongoing, evolved process. I mean, it's kind of like people trying to chase the algorithm. It's the same exact thing. It's like, if Google changes this, they're just going to adjust to do something different. There'll always be something.
Which is why you have to listen to a show like this.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think Google, to Google's credit, I think Google is getting further ahead than we are, and I think they've managed to stay ahead of us, in part through machine learning, in part through not telling us what they are changing in the algorithm. It's this huge black box, and that's why we need to experiment instead of going, through best practices all the time.
I think there was a fear there for a while, and I think there still is. Some people are afraid to do some of the testing. Let's stick, like you said, to best practices, because Google's going to give me a penalty or something.
The downside is greater than the upside.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hate that mentality that just create great content and Google will reward you. I hate that mentality, and it's so pervasive, especially outside the SEO world, that Google is this omniscient, God that is going to do 100% right. And those of us in the industry know that's not true. Great content that is not optimized is not going to be seen, and great content that is optimized has such a good chance of winning the SERP. It's ridiculous. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's also the fact that, if you just stick to best practices, you're never going to find anything new that works. I mean, there's always that line you don't want to cross, but I mean,
right. The other thing is that you want to experiment because of user experience, and user experience is becoming increasingly indistinguishable from good SEO, and in part because Google's probably looking at user engagement signals, task completion, the long clicks, and which they've probably been looking at for years. But good user experience is a part of experimentation as well, because the human component is so unpredictable. You just have to try things that you don't know if they're going to work or not, and see what works best.
On that note, if I was a website owner and I had a very limited time to improve my conversion rate, is my time best spent on testing the language of the button, the color of the button, or the layout of the form fields?
That's a great question.
Yes.
Can I
No.
can I walk around that question? If I had a limited time to improve conversions, I would, and I was just getting started, I would focus on speed first, website speed. It is the one thing that consistently improves both rankings and conversions across the board. And I don't understand why it, necessarily increases rankings, but I think there's that feedback loop going when people can access your site, even if it's milliseconds. That person with a really slow internet, in rural Georgia or Iowa, where I'm from, when I go to my parents' house, I can't access web pages. I'll just leave before they load. Working on speed is probably the single most effective strategy you can do when you want to improve conversions and rankings. So I would start with speed. After that,
there you go. I'm going to pull you back into the question. Then we took care of speed.
Yep.
Then is
You're not letting me out of this.
Right? Language of the button, color of the button, or the layout of the form fields.
I would focus on language of the button, Steve, for $500.
Now, you gave a pretty compelling case study at the beginning part of the show.
Yep. Funny enough, button color is kind of a funny thing because it's kind of lowballing it. It's kind of, when you're testing button color, you're really slumming in the CRO world. That said, I do a lot of international content. I do affiliate marketing, and I have I do a lot of working in different languages. I have seen that button color plays a huge difference when you go to different countries. For instance, the colors that work in the United States are almost the opposite of what works in Japan. So I really need to be conscious of that.
And then you have
weirdly, I have the one weird trick I do have. If nothing else, I found that bigger buttons just convert better. I hate ghost buttons. A best practices in filling out creating a page is you have one button because you just want people to click that button. But I think research has shown that if you litter the page with buttons, you increase the chance of somebody hitting one. So there's a lot of counterintuitive things with buttons that I think are kind of fun to play with sometimes. And they don't always create great user experiences, and they can kind of come off as spammy. But if I'm in a jam, I'll just make the button bigger. Yeah.
That must be a Seattle thing. You enunciate your buttons and your.
Oh no, that's totally an Iowa thing.
Okay.
I have this weird thing since I was a kid. Anytime there's a double T, I am certain the curtains are too little.
Well said.
Yeah, it's my own accent. I don't know where.
I like it. It's fun.
I was reading an article the other day that postulated if you're in an industry that's dominated by a big player, like travel, for example, that the more you deviate from the industry norms in terms of button style, the less likely you're going to convert.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I can see that because people have an expectation, a standard of what they're looking for, I suppose.
Right. What does it feel like to book a hotel, for example? And the more you try to deviate from that, the less successful you're going to be.
You guys just give me an idea. I'm going to start my own business on conversion rate optimization. I'm going to hit all the big companies. My rate's going to be $10,000 an hour. And my only advice is you need bigger buttons.
There you go. Just drop us a 5% affiliate fee and we're in. Yes. I have a question that I've been dying to ask you because I think you have an important piece of history, if I'm not mistaken, that you actually purchased the domain referrednot.com, right? You own notprovided.com?
Not provided, yes. Yes. I don't remember the year. It was 2011, 2012. It was the day that Google announced that they were removing keyword referral data through secured connections. They were going to start stripping it from analytics. And keywords would start. But don't worry, it's only going to affect 10% of keywords. I remember that being part of the announcement. Don't worry. Now it's close to 100%. And I quickly purchased the domain not provided, and I got an incredible amount of traffic to that site. And it was funny because my keyword reports were all not provided.
I saw that screenshot. It's hilarious.
I must rank really high for that because I'm just kidding.
And I ended up selling it for turning a tidy little profit and selling it a couple of years later to a software company. So I'm not sure what they did with it. I think they provided not provided reports, and they thought it fit in with their brand name. I'm not sure if it's even still around, but that was a fun piece of history. Yeah.
Great agency name.
Yeah, right.
Where's my report? It's not provided. All right. So now what will be, let's go back into that question again. What would be the next one?
Oh, the next one. I'm sorry, what question were we talking about? The buttons?
Right, exactly.
Right.
Oh, so yeah, so definitely button text. I haven't done a lot with form fields. I don't work a lot with form fields, so I'm not sure. I've always found that reducing the form fields and making them easier to fill out is always effective. That's going to be very dependent upon your own situation. Copywriting the title of the page, hugely important. People will read the text, but people generally skim the text, so it's often less important. I've done a lot of experimenting with longer pages, shorter pages. It's so dependent upon your vertical and the type of offer.
Right.
Sometimes people want to come to a page and they don't want anything but to do the thing that they came for. They don't want to read. They know exactly what they want, so they'll convert very quickly. Just try all the things eventually.
Cyrus, let me ask you this. Now, you just mentioned the length of content.
Yeah.
And I know you've done some studies on this. What have you seen as far as long form versus,
Yeah. I think we always hate to say that, long form is better. But in truth, long form content consistently outperforms shorter form content, and I prefer long form content almost all the time. That said, it's not a hard and fast rule. I recently added a bunch of content to some of my top affiliate pages, and it did nothing. People actually spent less time on the page. I don't know if I had the wrong content, if it intimidated them. It didn't convert well. I ended up removing it all. So that was a huge disappointment. But in general, when I'm creating pages, I like to hit that, 2,000 word limit, but it totally depends on what you're creating.
Sure.
But
certain
generally
topics you just can't cover that much.
You can't, but I like creating single resource pages. If you look at, I do a lot of research into health issues. Live Strong, Lance Armstrong's old association. If you look at their site, they often do very targeted pages, like that are addressing one keyword at a time. So it might be liver disease supplementation, and they will just have 2 paragraphs on supplements for liver disease. And then there's another site that is huge in the alt medicine world called Dr. Axe. And they have the complete opposite strategy, where they will have 5,000 and 6,000 word opuses on, everything you wanted to know about liver disease and supplementation. They will cover every single topic. And those pages get a ton of traffic because people are coming on, they're looking at the infographics, they're looking at everything. And it's 2 different worlds. Are you targeting that single keyword? Or are you targeting as many keywords as you can in one shot? And I prefer to target as many as you can in one shot because it's easier to produce one huge piece of content than 25 individual pieces of content.
Sure.
Those pages earn links at a much higher rate than the single piece because they're just not as impressive. So I'm just a huge fan of the big content all the time.
Very good.
Not for everybody, but it is for me.
Yeah. So, Cyrus, it's that time of the show where it's called Believe It or Leave It. Now, what we've done, Matt has done, give him all the credit, he has gone out and found statements on the web. And as Matt says, if it's on the web, it's got to be true, correct?
Got to be.
Yes.
So, so we're going to read you 3 different questions, and you're going to tell us to believe it or leave it.
Okay.
Sound good? Ready? Here's number 1. Google will recognize the value of improving user experience and will make use of A/B tests a ranking signal.
I need to parse that. I'm going to mostly believe it. I don't think they're actually looking at the A/B test, but maybe the result of the A/B test, if that's what they mean. If that's what it means, then I would believe it.
Okay. I wish Google would do the A/B test for me.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. But if you accept the fact that from the local search standpoint, that there's a reasonable amount of people that believe that activity within your GMB listing, you're updating photos, is a minor ranking signal.
Yep.
That it's really not that hard to believe that if Google looks at a piece of content and says, hey, they're continually improving the user experience, there might be a minor benefit.
You know,
to
that actually makes a lot of sense, because the A/B test itself is an update.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like that cadence thing that I was talking about earlier. So actually, that makes sense. We're going 100% in and going believe it on this.
There you go. All right, we got to believe it.
Well, think about it, Matt, because the more you change your site, the more your site tends to get crawled. So that makes total sense. Yeah. All right. Number 2 is conversion testing should be limited to an audience that parallels your converters.
Yeah, believe it. Right. Yes. I think if you're testing on your own site with the relevant pages, I think that's a natural side effect, but there might be something I'm missing there that I'm not understanding.
Okay. Last one, believe it or leave it. Green buttons always outperform red buttons in testing.
Not in Japan.
Depends where you're at. Geolocation.
Do not believe it. I've seen some really crappy red buttons.
But you can find that statement in many places on the internet.
Yeah.
I think, who was I talking to? I think Ollie Gardner, who expert in conversion rate optimization. I think he has some research showing that orange is the best converting color.
I think I did see that. Yep. And then I saw another piece of research that to me was really spot on. It's about the contrast ratio. So it isn't the color itself that is the variable. It is the relationship of the button color to the background color.
I have a saying about marketing that all marketing is contrast. Marketing is all about showing differences and comparing things. So it's the unified theory of everything. So I totally believe that.
So what you do on load, you flip the color each time someone loads the page.
You know, that's an interesting thing to test, frankly, especially for repeat visitors.
I mean, if you got enough visitors,
right,
do that.
Create disruption.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are about out of time. I want to thank you, Cyrus, for being on the show again. It's been always awesome when you come on. I mean, this is your second time, right?
Yep. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for all your information. It's been very helpful. I think it gives a lot of good actionable items. We do have one more part that we need to do, which is your tattoo.
Your Search Talk Live tattoo. Leave our audience with your shortest, most succinct, most compelling piece of advice. And I have to ask you to remember that Robert gets all of these tattoos, so keep in mind his ink budget.
My tattoo says, PageRank sculpting rocks.
There you go.
That'd be a cool tattoo.
Yeah, right. PageRank sculpting rocks.
So let me, if someone wants to reach you, your website is what?
My website is CyrusShepard.com. I have a search form on there, and I usually respond to people on Twitter if they message me politely.
Okay. And what is that on Twitter?
Cyrus Shepard.
Oh,
Cyrus Shepard.
It's pretty simple. All right, awesome. And then you have a blog on your website, which I highly recommend.
Yeah, it's a little neglected, but thank you.
It's good stuff.
And you've got posts on Moz as well.
I do. I have some posts on Moz that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, you should be.
Really good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks again,
guys.
guys.
I appreciate it. Lots of fun.
Yes, thanks a lot, man.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot, guys, for listening in to Search Talk Live. We be sure and visit searchtalklive.com to get the updates. Next week we have in the house Mike Moran. Right? Yes, I got it right.
Yeah, and if there's 250,000 people with search engine optimization in their LinkedIn profile, as Cyrus said, we should really be able to get to 100,000 downloads by tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, download it, everybody.
Thanks again, Cyrus. Thanks, Michelle, for live tweeting the show and being in the studio last week. That was pretty awesome.
Great to have her.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Search Talk Live is sponsored by the Robert Palmer family of companies.
Find the true value of your home when you log on. HomeValue.com.
If you have questions for Search Talk Live, or you're interested in being a guest or a sponsor of the show, email Robert at searchtalklive.com. That's searchtalklive.com.